Welcome to the first lecture of module 4 of mass transfer operation. In this module we will discuss absorption. In our previous lecture, mostly all the modules which we have covered so far, module 1 was on diffusion mass transfer, module 2 was on interface mass transfer when you have a more than one phases involved, and then we have considered different types of equipment which are used for the gas liquid operations, and now we will discuss the application part of the mass transfer processes. So, one such processes is the absorption process, and in this first lecture we will have introduction to absorption process, and in this process we will try to see how to calculate the minimum liquid flow rate required for a given separation. At the beginning we have introduced about the absorption process. Gas absorption is dissolving one or more components of the gas into a liquid system and to provide a solution. So, basically if we have a mixture of gases or if it is a one component and we want to make a solution of it, or we have a two component or more component systems where we would preferentially separate a certain components, what we do, we dissolve the components of the gas into the liquid systems and then we provide a solution of it. For example, gas from byproduct coke ovens. In the byproduct coke oven, we generally have ammonia as a byproduct and benzene and toluene also mixed with that vapor. So, gas from this byproduct coke oven is washed with water to remove ammonia and again with an oil to remove benzene and toluene vapor. You can see that depending on the suitability of the solvent for a particular component to absorb, the solvent over here is decided accordingly. Like you can see, if we wanted to remove ammonia, which is highly preferential in case of water, water can have higher affinity for ammonia compared to benzene and toluene vapor. So, the mixture initially what happens, it passes through the solvent water and then which removes the ammonia, and then again the exit gas is contacted with oil to remove the benzene and toluene vapor. Like objectionable hydrogen sulfide gas, so which are present in natural hydrocarbon gases, sometimes it is present and that is separated with various alkaline solutions. So, hydrogen sulfide is very corrosive gas and it is generally not preferred with natural gas for its use in different purposes. So, we need to remove the hydrogen sulfide gas. So, being it acidic gas, we need to have alkaline solutions to remove it. Sometimes the absorbed gas undergoes a chemical reactions in the liquid phase. As we discussed in the earlier examples, like removal of hydrogen sulfide from natural gas using alkanolamines. So, what happens? Alkaline solution over here is alkanolamines. So, it has a amine functional group like monoethanolamine, diethanolamine, different ethanolamines. These reacts almost instantaneously with hydrogen sulfide because the reaction is proton transfer reactions, and hence once we use the alkaline solution or alkanolamines, the hydrogen sulfide reacts with it. So, very highly reactive solvent with the liquid phase. So, absorption occurs via the two process. One is called chemical absorption or reactive process. So, like in hydrogen sulfide, similar we can remove carbon dioxide using the alkaline or alkanolamine solutions as we discussed before. So, carbon dioxide is also, as you all know, it has a very significant effect on global warming, and people are working a lot on the removal of carbon dioxide, and absorption is one of the mature technology to separate carbon dioxide from different gas mixtures. One of them is natural gas, another one is flue gas which comes from the power plant, particularly coal based power plant. The other process is non-reactive process, we call it physical absorption process. So, in this case the solute which absorbs in the liquid phase, it does not react with it, but it dissolve in the liquid phase based on its affinity and make a solution of it. So, like oxygen present in the air, it dissolves in water. So, water also contain dissolved oxygen, because we have in the air about 20% oxygen. So, from there it dissolve in the water as well. So, these are the two process via absorption takes place. Absorption required mass transfer of a substance from gas phase to the liquid phase. So, as we have said before, there is a solute transfer from the gas phase to the liquid phase, like carbon dioxide present in the mixture of other inert gases. So, carbon dioxide preferentially transfer to the liquid phase depending on its ability of the solvent. Okay. So, when mass transfer occurs in the opposite direction, that is from the liquid to the gas, the process is called desorption or stripping. So, basically once the particular gas is dissolved to the solvent and we wanted to recover that gas or we wanted to recover the solvent, we need to desorb it, we need to strip it back. So, the opposite process of absorption is called the desorption or stripping, where mass transfer takes place from the liquid phase to the vapor phase or the gas phase. Very often the loaded solvent is regenerated for further use via desorption process. If you see the absorption and stripping process for carbon dioxide capture, you have typical absorber column where you absorb a particular gas preferentially from a mixture in an absorber, and then it is the loaded solvent is fed to the top of the stripping tower, and it is in the stripping section it is heated up or it operates at a lower pressure than the absorber, and then you will get the dissolved gas at the top, and at the bottom of the column you will get regenerated solvent which is usually at higher temperature, and you can cool it down to use it further in the absorber where it will be fed at the top of the absorber. Now, we will discuss about the equilibrium curve and the equilibrium solubility. The rate at which a gaseous constituent of a mixture will dissolve in an absorbent liquid depends on the departure from the equilibrium which exists. So, the departure from the equilibrium states will define the rate of diffusion or rate of absorption process or the rate at which the gas will dissolve. Therefore, it is necessary to consider the equilibrium characteristics of the gas liquid systems. This is very important. Now, if we consider two component systems, that is, if a quantity of single gas and a relatively non-volatile liquids are brought to equilibrium, then what happens? So, single gas and a relatively non-volatile liquid means the liquid solvent is not volatile. It will has a very low vapor pressure at a particular temperature where the gas will be absorbed. So, the resulting dissolved gas in the liquid is said to be the solubility of the gas at the prevailing temperature and pressure. Once the system come in contact the solute gas and the non-volatile liquid as solvent kept in an enclosure at a particular temperature and pressure, and then they reach the equilibrium, the amount of gas which will be dissolved in the liquid phase will be called as the solubility of that gas. Now, at a fixed temperature, the solubility concentration will increase with pressure in the manner as shown in figure 1. So, you can see that if you increase the pressure, the solubility of the gas at a particular temperature, the solubility of the gas will gradually increase. Okay, so, the more gas, you can see the solute concentration in the liquid phase will gradually increase as we increase the pressure. Either if it is single gas, it is total pressure of the gas phase, or if it is no mixture of gases, then you have a partial pressure of the gas. So, different gases and liquids yields separate solubility curves. You can see A, B and C, they are 3 different gases, and they under a particular temperature they show at different pressure, they show different solubility in a particular liquid. Now, if the equilibrium pressure is high, that is curve B, figure 1. So, in this figure the solubility of ammonia in water at 30 degree centigrade is shown mostly, and some other gas. So, if the equilibrium pressure is high, the curve B, figure 1, the gas is relatively insoluble in the liquid. Even if increasing the pressure in the gas phase appreciably, the solubility in the liquid phase is relatively low, is close to 0.2 mole fractions of the solute. So, we call it is relatively insoluble if the equilibrium pressure is high, while if it is low as the curve C, in this case the solubility is said to be high compared to B and A. So, in this case you can see with a small change in pressure we have the mole fraction in the liquid phase is increased to 0.4. So, we say that the solubility is high, but all these are relative matters only. So, if we can incorporate, it is possible to produce any ultimate gas concentration in the liquid if sufficient pressure is applied. So, if we keep on increasing the at a particular temperature, if we keep on increasing the pressure, the solubility we can make it any solubility we want in the liquid phase. Okay, ultimate gas concentration we can achieve. The liquefied form of the gas is completely soluble in the liquid. So, if we increase the pressure in the gas phase and if we make it liquid, and it is completely miscible with the liquid solvent. So, we can get mole fractions to 1. The solubility of any gas is influenced by the temperature in a manner Van 't Hoff's law of mobile equilibria. If the temperature of a system at equilibrium is raised, that the changes will occur which will absorb heat. Usually the solubility of the gas decreases with increasing temperatures. Now, if a mixture of gases is brought into contact with a liquid and under certain conditions, So, so far we have considered the single gas, and we have seen that how the solubility changes with change in pressure at a particular temperature, and the solubility changes with the temperature at a particular pressure. Now, if we take more than one component in the mixture, gas mixture, that is mixture of gases, and it brought into contact with the liquid under certain conditions, the equilibrium solubility of each gas will be independent of the others, that the equilibrium is described in terms of the partial pressure in the gas mixtures. So, if one of the component of the gas are substantially insoluble, then their concentration in the liquid will be so small that cannot influence the solubility of the relatively soluble other components. So, if we have a two component, like if we take air and ammonia mixture, and ammonia is highly soluble in water, whereas the other component of air is very low solubility in water, like carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, this has very low solubility in water. So, we call them as inert with respect to ammonia, and its influence on the solubility of ammonia will be very less. For example, curve A will also describe the solubility of A in water when A is diluted with air, like as we said air ammonia mixture. Since air is so insoluble in water, provided that the coordinate of the plot is considered as the partial pressure of A in the gas mixture. So, as you can see here already it is mentioned, this is the partial pressure of solute in the gas phase. Now, if several components of the mixture are appreciably soluble, what happens? The general rules which we have considered earlier, it will not influence the equilibrium solubility of a particular component, will not be influenced by the presence of other components. That is only hold when we have a one relatively highly soluble gases and the other gas are considered as relatively insoluble. In that case, that general principle can apply. But if we have a components of the mixture that are appreciably soluble, the generalization will be applicable only if the solute gases are indifferent to the nature of the liquid. So, indifferent to the nature of the liquid means if they soluble in the solvent and it forms the ideal solution, then it will not influence. So, although you have a multiple component A, B, C and all of them are appreciably soluble in the liquid phase, but it forms the ideal solution, then the influence of the solubility of one component will not be influenced by the other component. For example, a mixture of propane and butane gases will dissolve in non-volatile paraffin oil independently, since the solution that results are substantially ideal. So, if we take the homologous series of hydrocarbons, propane and butane gas, that can be dissolved in paraffin oil and then independently, since the solution that results are substantially ideal solutions. So, if it is ideal solution, then this will not influence of the one component of the other for their solubility. On the other hand, the solubility of ammonia in water can be expected to be influenced by the presence of methylamine, since the resulting solution of these gases are not ideal. So, ammonia will react with water, it will form the reactive solutions and that is not ideal solution, and methylamine also will react with water and it forms the reactive solutions. The reaction takes place in the liquid phase and then the solution which it forms is non-ideal. So, in this case the generalization will not be applicable, and that means the solubility of the ammonia will be influenced by the solubility of the methylamine or vice versa. Now, we need to select a particular solvent and what properties we need for its selection. The principal purpose of the absorption operation is to produce a specific solution. So, if our purpose is to produce a specific solution, like for example, production of hydrochloric acid, the solvent is specified by the nature of the product. So, if we wanted to produce hydrochloric acid, it will absorb only the gaseous component, produce the solution of the hydrochloric acid which will be usable product. So, in this case the solution will be decided based on the use of hydrochloric acid. But if our principal purpose is not for the production of the specific solution, but to separate components, then the principal purpose to remove or separate some constituent from the gas mixture. So, choice is frequently possible. Like water is the cheapest and most plentiful solvent, but the following properties are important consideration. So, although water is cheapest and available plenty of the solvent for use, but the properties of the water may not be suitable for all applications. So, the important properties or the important characteristics which are required for the selection of solvent, where we need to separate the mixture of constituents, different properties need to be considered for selecting the solvent. One is the solubility. The solvent in which the solubility of the solute is very high is the preferred solvent. So, if the solubility of that component is very high, and then with a small solvent we can absorb appreciable amount of that gas or of that solute. A chemical reactions of the solvent with the solute will frequently result in high solubility. Now, if there is a chemical reactions as we said earlier, like carbon dioxide or hydrogen sulphide can react with base like sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, or alkanol amines like monoethanolamine, diethanolamine. These are highly reactive solvents with the particularly for these solutes. So, that will enhance the total solubility or equilibrium solubility. So, a chemical reactions of the solvent with the solute will frequently result in high solubility. If the solvent is required to be reused, the reaction must be reversible. For example, if we take H2S, hydrogen sulphide can be removed from the mixture using alkanolamine solution and easily stripped at high temperature. Similarly, hydrogen sulphide or carbon dioxide, if we react with alkanolamine, the reaction happens through the formation of carbamate and finally the bicarbonate ions, and the reaction reversible in nature. And if we take it to the solvent mixture after it reacts with this solute to the stripper or desorption cell, and if we heat it up, the reverse reactions will take place and it will release carbon dioxide or absorbed H2S. But if we do not want to strip it back, we wanted to make a solution of it, like caustic soda also removes hydrogen sulphide excellently, because it is very highly alkaline solution, basic solution, but released it in the stripping operation. No, it does not release the H2S in the stripping operation. If we even if we increase the temperature, because the reaction is irreversible in nature. The second property which we look for, a good solvent should have a low volatility or vapor pressure, so that the solvent loss with the carrier gas due to vaporization remains small. Basically, if the vapor pressure is less of the solvent, particularly it helps when we regenerate the solvent in the stripper. If its vapor pressure is very high, there will be huge solvent loss in the stripper or desorption cell. So, the solvent should have a very low volatility or vapor pressure. The third point is the cost. A solvent should not be very expensive, so that the vaporization and other losses are not significant in terms of economy. Okay, the solvent cost should be less, it should not be expensive. The fourth parameter which we look for is the corrosiveness. Like use of a non-corrosive or less corrosive solvent reduces the material cost of the equipment as well as its maintenance cost. So, if the solvent is non-corrosive, and then we can use the cheaper material, and the overall cost of the equipment will be much less. But if it corrodes, like hydrogen sulfide, if it presents in appreciable quantity in amine solvent, then it corrodes the mild steel arrangement. So, carbon steel if we use. So, material of construction is important in case of solvent of amine and hydrogen sulfide gas. So, in that case we have to use expensive stainless steel material, which will increase the overall cost of the plant. So, corrosiveness is very important of the solvent. Another property is the viscosity. The low viscosity is preferred, so that it flows easily. Low pressure drop on pumping, improved flooding and good heat transfer characteristics. So, basically if the viscosity of the solvent is very high, it will increase the pumping cost, and it will increase the pressure drop as well in the column, and the heat transfer of the viscous fluid will not be good. So, the viscosity of the solvent should be as low as possible, so that all these important factors like pressure drop, pumping energy cost, flooding and heat transfer, these parameters improves. So, solvent viscosity should be less. Other thing is the hazardous and toxicity. A solvent should not be hazardous or toxic, and it should be preferably non-flammable and should not be hazardous or toxic. So, these properties are very important while selecting a particular solvent for a particular application. Now, let us consider an absorber column or absorption column. So, which is shown over here. You can see the gas which enters at the bottom at a flow rate of G1, rate of gas in at location 1, it is mole per time, and G2 is the rate of gas out at location 2, G2 over here, and G1 over here is also mole per time. Gs is the rate of gas flow on solute free basis, it is also in unit of mole per time. Then G is the rate of gas flow at any arbitrary location in mole per time. So, inside the column and any arbitrary location. Small y1, y and y2 are the mole fractions of the solute in the gas phase at respective locations. Capital Y, capital Y1 and capital Y2 are the mole ratios of the solute in gas phase at respective locations. So, this nomenclature is already we have discussed in our previous modules. L1, L2, Ls and L, these are all liquid rates at inlet and outlet, and also the Ls is the rate of liquid on solute free basis, it is also mole per time. L is the rate of liquid flow at any arbitrary locations in mole per time. Small x, x1 and x2 are the mole fractions use of the solute in the liquid phase at respective locations. Capital X, capital X1 and capital X2 are the mole ratios of the solute in the liquid phase at respective locations. So, these are nomenclature of the typical absorption column. Now, a suitable solvent has to be selected for the absorption process. The equilibrium data at a chosen rating conditions, that is temperature and pressure conditions, have to be obtained from the literature or from any other source. So, once for a particular process, depending on the properties of the solvent required for that application are selected at the particular separation process, and then its equilibrium data of that particular gas mixtures should be obtained at a particular temperature and pressure conditions, or either particular temperature or pressure, or whatever the pressure condition and temperature conditions required. Either that has to be obtained from the literature or from any other source. So, once these are in place, now how to determine the required solvent flow rate for a given absorption problems. So, for this particular figure shown over here, we have to find out how to calculate the minimum solvent rate for a given absorption problem. Now, if for this case, if we do the overall material balance equation as we have done in our earlier section, this is Gs into capital Y1 minus capital Y2 would be equal to Ls capital X1 minus capital X2. So, this is the overall material balance equation, equation 1. The equation of operating line is Ls by Gs would be equal to Y1 minus Y2 divided by X1 minus X2. This is equation 2. So, this is the equation of the operating line. Now, there still remains two unknown quantities, one is Ls and X1. So, Ls and X1 has to be determined. If one of these components, say Ls is fixed, the other X1 can be calculated from the material balance equation given earlier and vice versa. So, either Ls is fixed, you can calculate the X1 from the material balance, or X1 is fixed, then you can calculate the Ls. Now, the operating line can then be drawn by locating and joining the terminal points, that is x1 y1 and x2 y2 on the xy plane. The slope of the operating line, that is Ls by Gs, two types of equilibrium lines and a set of operating lines of different slopes are shown in figures 3a and 3b. You can see over here, this is equilibrium curve, and in this case in the bottom curve, this is the equilibrium curve. You can see the operating line BC, BD and BM, similarly BP and BN in this bottom figure. So, these are operating line with different slopes, these are plotted. If Ls is reduced, that is a lower liquid rate is used, the slope decreases. You can see if we decrease Ls, the slope of the operating line will decrease, and from BC it will come to BD and then BM and so on. So, it will change, the slope of the operating line will reduce as we reduce the liquid rate, and the operating line BD having one fixed terminal at point x2 y2 comes closer to the equilibrium line. So, it is coming, this is the equilibrium line, and then operating line BC is comes to BD, which is closer to the equilibrium line compared to BC line. The driving force will decrease as a result. So, as we said at the beginning, the departure from the equilibrium line is the driving force for mass transfer. So, the distance between the operating line and the equilibrium line represents the driving force. So, in this case, as we decrease the liquid rate, the distance between the operating line and the equilibrium line decreases, and hence the driving force decrease. So, a larger height of packing or is a larger number of plates, if a tray tower is used, has to be provided to achieve the desired degree of separation. For the same separation, if we have a higher liquid rate, the number of plate required or the height of tower required for that given separation should increase if we decrease the liquid rate. As the liquid rate is gradually reduced, the orientation of the operating line will change. Eventually, a situation will arise when the operating line meets the equilibrium line at a certain point. So, you can see the BM curve, it meets at point P on the equilibrium curve. So, the driving force at this point, that is the intersection point between or tangent point between equilibrium curve and the operating line curve, which is at point P. So, the driving force over there is 0. So, this means that the corresponding liquid rate is called the theoretical liquid rate. So, once this liquid rate is achieved and it touches the equilibrium curve at that point, which is tangent to that point P, this liquid rate is called the minimum liquid rate. Now, if we further reduce the liquid rate beyond the minimum, the operating line will cross the equilibrium line like over here, which means that the absorption of gas occurs in one section from here to this, because for absorption the operating line will lie above the equilibrium line, and for stripping the operating line will lie below the equilibrium line. So, from this point to this point the absorption would take place, and then the other section of the column you will have desorption from this point to point N. This is physically impossible. A line like BM cannot be an operating line. So, because in a column, a single column, it cannot part of this can operate as absorber and part of this can operate as stripper. So, which is physically it cannot cross the equilibrium curve, same operating line cannot cross the equilibrium curve. So, this is physically impossible, and hence this cannot be an operating line. So, a column cannot operate even theoretically at a liquid rate less than the minimum defined above. So, minimum liquid rate which is required, which touches the point at equilibrium. So, an absorber cannot operate below this liquid rate. So, the slope of the operating line at minimum liquid is Ls mean by Gs. Since Gs, the gas flow rate of the carrier gas, is known, Ls mean can be calculated from the slope of the Bm. So, carrier gas flow rate is already known, and then Ls by Gs we can get the slope of this operating line at the minimum liquid rate, and then we can calculate the Ls minimum from the slope of this curve B and M. The corresponding concentration of the exit liquid is X max, that is the maximum liquid concentration we can achieve is X max. The driving force is 0 at point P. So, at this point the driving force is 0, that is the point of tangency for the particular shape of the equilibrium line, which is called the pinch point. The point P over here is known as pinch point. What result do we expect if we want to find out the number of ideal plates required for the desired separation using the minimum liquid rate? So, how many ideal plates should be required if we wanted to calculate the number of stages required for a given separation? That is we need to answer. In order to address this question, we redraw the equilibrium line and the operating line BM for the minimum liquid in figure 3a over here. To find out the number of ideal stages, construct the steps between the equilibrium line and the operating line starting from either end. So, either you can start from this position or you can start from any other position. So, if you do this staircase arrangement, what you will notice, let us start at point B. As we approach P, which is the pinch point, the driving force tends to 0 and it becomes impossible to reach the point P by drawing a finite number of steps. So, as you go on over here by drawing the steps towards the pinch point, the driving force is so less you can't achieve to reach this point P by drawing finite number of trays. So, theoretically it will need an infinite number of plates or an infinite height of packing if a pack tower is used to achieve the desired separation using the minimum liquid rate. Okay. So, for practical applications we have to run the absorber more than the minimum liquid flow rate. A few more points have to be noted in this connection. The minimum liquid rate can also be determined by a similar graphical construction on the xy plane using the mole fraction unit of concentration. So far we have shown you the graphical construction using the mole ratio unit, which is capital X and capital Y, but same thing can be done with the mole fraction unit small x small y plane. Recall that the operating line will no longer be straight line in this case. So, if the operating line is not straight, the procedure described above can be followed in principle to determine the minimum liquid rate for absorption. However, we will have to deal with two curves in order to determine the point of tangency or the pinch point, because both the lines are curved, both equilibrium line as well as the operating line. So, somehow we have to deal with this, which is sometimes difficult to find out the pinch point. This poses a practical difficulty. So, as a matter of convenience and practice, the minimum liquid rate is determined by graphical construction of the capital XY plane. Now, if the equilibrium relation, which is expressed in terms of mole ratio unit, is linear, that is capital Y is equal to alpha capital X, the minimum liquid rate can be determined algebraically by calculating X max would be equal to capital Y1 by alpha and substituting it in the material balance equation 1, which we have done before. In this case, the coordinate of the pinch point would be capital Y1 by alpha Y1, and this LS mean would be GS into capital Y1 minus Y2 divided by Y1 by alpha minus X2. Also it has to be noted that in any practical problem, the pinch point does not occur at the top end of the column for absorption. So, the pinch point is observed either bottom of the absorption column or at some point of the absorption column. It does not occur at the top end of the absorption column. An absorption tower has to be operated at a liquid rate larger than the minimum one. There is no general rule for determining the actual liquid rate to be used. So, the factors that govern the choice of the liquid rate will be discussed later. However, a liquid rate 1.22 times the minimum liquid rate is frequently used. So, in this connection it will be interesting to have a closer look at the shape of an equilibrium line in connection with the determination of the minimum solvent rate for gas absorption. If Henry's law is applicable, that means y is equal to mx, and if m is greater than 1. So, in this case what happens, the equilibrium line on the capital XY plane, that is the mole ratio unit, is concave upward. So, equilibrium line would be concave upward. So, the pinch point corresponding to the minimum solvent rate for absorption occurs at the bottom of the tower. So, you have a pinch point which will be at the bottom of the tower. But on the other hand, if m is less than 1, the xy curve is concave downward. So, you will have the operating line touches the equilibrium line at some intermediate points when the minimum solvent rate is used. You can see that for the minimum liquid rate, the pinch point occurs either at the bottom of the column or at some point of the column, not at the top of the column. Now, let us take a small example. A gas mixture containing 3% by volume pentane vapor and 97% inert. The mixture is treated with a non-volatile absorption liquid oil in an absorber and 97% removal of the pentane is required. The feed solvent is free from solute. The feed gas rate is given as 50 kilomole per hour. The equilibrium relation is given as y is equal to 0.25 x divided by 1 plus 0.75 x. Now, we have to calculate the minimum solvent rate required. So, let us do that. So, gas rate which is given 50 kilomole per hour and 97% inert and 3% pentane, which is small y1 is 0.03 mole fractions of the pentane vapor. Input rate of the pentane would be 50 into 0.03. So, it is 1.5 kilomole per hour, which is the input pentane rate. So, carrier gas would be total 50. So, minus 1.5. So, 48.5 kilomole per hour. So, that is the GS. So, this is GS and this is the pentane rate, pentane flow rate. Now, 97% solute has to be absorbed and 3% leaves with the carrier gas. So, y1 would be small y1 divided by 1 minus y1, which is equal to 0.03 divided by 1 minus 0.03, which is equal to 0.03 divided by 0.07. So, capital Y1 would be 0.0309 and capital Y2 would be equal to 0.03 into y capital Y1, which is equal to 0.03 into 0.03 0.9 which is equal to 0.009. So, we can calculate capital Y1 and capital Y2 and the solvent is given pure solvent which is free of solute. So, capital X2 is 0. Now, what we need to do with the equations given for the equilibrium relations. So, we can draw the xy plane, the equilibrium curve, and then locate the point capital X2 Y2. So, these are the data which we can calculate from this equilibrium relation capital X and capital Y. So, this is equilibrium data and then if we can plot, this is the equilibrium line. Now, draw the operating line X2 Y2 that touches the equilibrium line. So, it will be touches somewhere here, not this point. So, it is touches somewhere here which is at this point. The point of tangency P is the pinch point and the operating line corresponding to the minimum liquid rate. At this point we need to calculate x value, that is x1 and y1. So, we can calculate the slope of operating line. So, with respect to this point is 0.019. So, which is over here and this is y2 we have calculated, this is capital Y2, this is capital Y1 and then this is x1 and this is x2 which is 0. So, we can calculate the slope which is 0.125 and Gs is given which is 48.5 kilomole per hour. So, Ls minimum would be equal to 48.5 into 0.125. So, it is 6.06 kilomole per hour. So, this way we can calculate the minimum liquid flow rate. Now, for practical application, if it is given that the actual liquid rate you need to use for the particular operation, if it is not given, then you can use some factor between 1.2 to 2 to calculate the actual liquid flow rate required for that separation process. Thank you for attending and hearing this lecture, and we will continue our lecture on absorption in the next class.